All right, welcome to the Potcast show. My name is Joe, and with me I have Duncan today, Duncan Trussell.
Hi.
And thanks for being on the show. Basically, you just agreed to it, so I'm going to try to think of some questions real quick.
Okay.
Everyone knows that you're into drugs and whatnot. Do you remember the first drug you had or did?
The first drug?
Yeah, the first one, like besides alcohol, I guess.
I actually took acid before I drank.
Really?
Yeah, and it's weird. It's a weird thing. Usually, like high school kids drink and then take acid. But because of that, I can remember the first time I had alcohol, and my only reference point for like being high was acid. Being like, this is such a garbage drug. Legitimately confused.
Yes,
why are people drinking this? This high is horrible. It's just terrible. It's like an awful buzz compared to LSD.
Yeah, and I know the feeling too because the first drug I ever did was 3 hits of really good LSD when I was 19.
Wow.
And then I did Molly, and then I did weed, and then I got into drinking. So
yeah,
it was interesting because I didn't plan on it. I wanted to be a cop for a long time growing up, so I didn't do anything up until 19. And my buddy was like, "Hey man, I got some clean shit. You're probably never gonna see anything this good again, so you might as well just do it." And I was like, "Okay, cool."
What do you mean? He's like, "You'll never see anything like this again"? Because I remember back then, there was a time where it was hard to find good LSD.
This was shipped from Europe in a postcard, and it was called UFOs, and it was paper, and it had little UFOs on the paper, and the postcard had a UFO on it, and it had like a beam, and clouds and trees and stuff. And he's like, "Look at this." I looked at it sober, and he said, look, and I did. And then he's like, "I'm gonna show it to you again later." And then I did the 3 hits, got super high when I was peaking, came back and looked at it again, and it was animated. The UFO was blinking, the beam that was coming down was steady coming down.
That's so interesting.
I was just like, whoa, everything I believed up to that point kind of just shed itself of our perception of reality, you know? And I was like, this is unbelievable.
That was always the entry point, right? Like I can remember my friend telling me about this drug, LSD, and he's like, he drew a stupid piano on a piece of paper. This was when I was in the 9th grade. And he goes, if you were on LSD, the piano would move like this. And I was so excited by that possibility of there being like a way to look into reality, and it is no longer quite so solid.
Yeah.
But isn't that sort of like that's just like the fireworks show of LSD. And it's what a lot of people get into it, just thinking the visuals or whatever.
Yeah.
But really, don't you think there's something more to it than just that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm kind of glad I did that much the first time because it kind of gave me like a full effect. But taking it back a few notches and microdosing and doing a little bit when getting the body high where you don't get the visuals, I think is really good for like depression, anxiety, and stuff like that.
Now, I haven't looked this up, but apparently Hoffman said that in lower doses, it works in the same way that Adderall does. Like it would be a treatment for ADHD. And it still might be.
I can see that for sure. But I looked at the art carefully on that postcard, and you can tell that there was like half of an alien head here and half of an alien head here. And when you did the drugs, like the LSD, like lifted and shifted, like you do with the visuals, I think, when you're on LSD.
What do you mean?
Like, if you stare at something on LSD, I've noticed that what you stare at lifts and shifts, and it creates like that wave that you see.
Sure.
And so what it did was it was art specifically designed to come to life and animate.
Oh, it's like they were like, this LSD pairs very nicely.
Yes, with this art. It was specifically made, and I've looked for that type of art ever since.
Visionary
art? This was
art?
in '99, and I haven't found anything, not even anything online.
Fascinating. Well, there's so many things I'm going to be very happy when the prohibition is over, but we're going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
And part of what we will lose is the mysterious nature of LSD, which is that anytime you find yourself with LSD, in general, you have no idea the chemist who spent, so much time, if it's a good batch, making it and had to learn how to do it and put their ass on the line to try to do it.
Yeah.
All that there's so many of these, like, I love, like, in Eastern in the Easter traditions, the stories of the saints. They live up in the caves. You'll never see them. They are meditating and like trying to hold a kind of space for the planet to heal. But the LSD chemists, they get no credit, and yet many of them are very similar in that they're not doing it because they want to make money.
They're doing it to cure certain things and to use it as a medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's literally like no one outside of the most famous ones that I'm aware of, like Owsley or whatever. They're these invisible, saints that live in the outskirts of society, and we're so lucky that they are aware.
When Jerry Garcia would come to town on tour, he would bring sheets and sheets of LSD and just hand it out, apparently, in the crowds.
Well, there was a group. Have you ever heard of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow, yeah. So they still exist.
Yeah, they're the ones that passed out all the LSD, right?
Well, yeah, as a religion. They recognize it as a religion. So, they would go through India. When Ram Dass was in India, and when, a lot of the hippies were going to India to find, truth, the Brotherhood would go through India, giving the most incredible LSD to the hippies and to the yogis and stuff. They're still around.
Yeah.
Apparently, I don't think if I've ever, if you meet them, you're not going to know it.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so, do you, as far as drugs go, do you remember the order you started? You said LSD, right? And then, what you did
Probably
after?
the order would have gone LSD, marijuana, alcohol, mushrooms.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah.
When I was 12, I actually got mercury poisoning.
What?
Yeah, it was the craziest trip ever, dude. My parents, for some reason, they weren't the best. They had a film vial of mercury in the kitchen cabinet, and I found it, and I poured it into my hand, and it was like a blob of mercury, and I was like, oh man, this is the coolest shit ever, I just kind of swam a bit about it, but yeah, man, that shit fucked me up, and what happened was I played with it for 3 days straight. I come home.
Your parents must have shit bricks when they found out.
No, man, they didn't know, because what happened was I was 12, I tried to go lay down and go to sleep one night, and I was staring at the white wall, and I couldn't go to sleep, and a red rectangle appeared on the wall, and then it started beating at the same pace as my heart, and the rectangle got bigger and bigger, and as it got bigger, there's noises that happened in my head that got louder and louder, and it was all the shit I heard that day being played back at once. So it was like a combination of the arcade, the bowling alley I was at, my parents telling me I'm a piece of shit, all the sounds of the clock that I heard,
Were
all
your
being
parents
played back.
mean to you?
Well, kind of, but it's no big deal. But at the time, it was just so crazy, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't relate that it was the mercury because I didn't know it was bad for me, And I would eventually walk out into the living room and just stare in the living room, and the walls would be boom, just breathing in and out.
Okay, so here's some interesting stuff about mercury. Stop me if you
Yeah.
And I could be wrong about much of it. One, Isaac Newton.
He fucked around with that shit, right?
Yes, and it was in his hair. They say that his hair. Yeah, he was fucking around with it so much that it had gotten into his his hair.
Yeah.
In Japan, have you heard of this? There's a place where one of the emperors is buried, and the land is contaminated with mercury because inside, they theorize that inside the tomb there's rivers of mercury surrounding it. Isn't that wild?
No.
Mercury, yeah, and mercury. It has some relationship with Hermes, Hermeticism. It's always been it's a kind of an occult substance. Quicksilver is what they call it.
Oh,
right?
okay,
yeah. And also the term Mad as a Hatter. Have you heard that?
Yeah, Mad Hatter, because that's what the Mad Hatter would do, probably, was doing mercury and killing people.
Well, no, because when people used to make hats, for some reason they were using mercury as part of the... so they would say Mad as a Hatter because they were working with mercury and they didn't know it had this neurotoxicity.
Yeah.
Which is what you experience.
Yeah.
And you're lucky you survived it. You're lucky you're okay.
Well, I hope so, man. So far, so good. You know, I might have a tumor in my spine eventually or something. I don't know.
I don't know if it causes tumors, does it?
I don't know. It's just,
I think it's
doesn't
just like
seem
you
good.
could get an earth mat. You can get
I don't
it
think
out
it
of
leaves your body, though.
You can get it. There's apparently like ways to get it out.
Like a spinal tap or something?
No, I think you can do infusions. Like there's different infusions you could do, maybe NAD or something like that. But you can sort of cleanse your body. You should try it.
I should.
I've got mercury amalgam fillings, and any of my hippie friends are like, "You gotta get that shit out of your mouth."
Yeah, exactly.
But then when I go to the dentist, they're like, "You're fine. Just don't grind your teeth,
Yeah.
or you'll slowly go insane."
So real quick before we wrap it up, stand-up comedy. Do you remember the age you were at where you knew for sure you wanted to do stand-up
Oh,
comedy?
now I'm not at that age. Like I never had that. I have comedian friends who are like, well, I knew right away I would be a comedian, and I never had that kind of confidence. I never did. I always found that to be really like interesting when someone's like, I knew I would be a comic. It's like, whoa, really? You knew? I used to memorize jokes from the Truly Tasteless Jokes joke book. And then, not knowing anything about comedy, I would go on the bus and I would tell those jokes to people, and they would laugh, and it made me feel so good.
Yeah.
And then I can remember this one like girl going, "You should be a comedian," and I remember that, like it stuck in my head. But I never was like, "I'm going to be a comedian." I was like, "Wow, that girl thinks I should be a comedian." That's it.
Yeah.
So I never had a moment where I that whole thing, like, when was the moment you knew? I think that's when you hear people talk about the moment they knew for sure they knew, like a specific moment, it's fascinating to me. Like I always wonder about that because I never felt really.
Well, it's different for everybody. You know?
Yeah.
Because comedy draws different types of people. I think someone else said that you have to be a certain kind of crazy to pursue comedy, which is true.
You have to be a fucking idiot. And also, like, no, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean,
no,
like,
you just gotta be a little...
How crazy, how how mercury contaminated you can be like, this is gonna work. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, that's what's beautiful about comedians.
Yeah.
That's why I think there's something mystical about every comedian. It's like they have gone way off the beaten path and the strangest profession ever. You know, so I think there's something really beautiful about it. I don't care if you knew or didn't know or whatever. I just think it's, and I didn't mean just with comedy, I mean with anything.
Yeah,
Anytime someone is like, that was the moment I knew, that feels like a story you're telling yourself, like, just to make sense of your life.
Yeah, to have the story.
Yeah. I don't think anyone is really like, that was the moment.
Yeah, I don't know, because I was probably like 10 when I watched Richard Pryor for the first time, and I laughed my ass off, and I thought to myself, that looks like a lot of fun. I would want to do something like that, you know. And then for a long time, I didn't really think about it, and then the kind of personality I've always had was I never enjoyed speech class. I never enjoyed being the center of attention, you know. And then I had kind of like a spiritual experience one day. It was like an out-of-body experience. I think I accidentally fell into a meditative state, and some DMT got released in my brain because I was in this space and I was cold, and it was fucking amazing. It was beautiful. And
you were cold?
Back. Yeah, like I felt so real that it was cold, because I was deep in space and I could barely see Earth. And then I came back to my body, and then it was just like, it changed everything in me. It made me want to pursue things that I was always scared to pursue. You know, it made me want to conquer some of my fears and stuff like that. So I pursued stand-up comedy. I went down to LA for a comedy show called The Comedy Car Hole, which they were doing out of a garage for like 10 years straight. Went to a couple of those, got the bug, and came back up here. And I live in Kitsap County, which is like 25, 30 miles from here. But I do shows out there now. I've been doing it for almost 10 years, and I absolutely love it. Like, just performing, producing, and everything about comedy and the scene that we have out there. We're all tight. We all support each other, you know. So it's really fucking cool. And to see you perform last night at TCC was poetry in motion. It was just absolutely beautiful.
It's very kind of you to say.
How much natural comedy there was. You look so comfortable, like you've been doing it for
I haven't been doing it
10,
for a long
20
time.
years. You just looked good, and the organic humor that you were able to extract from the crowd was just fucking awesome. So,
I really appreciate that. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, it was fucking a good time. So, and my friends that came out, we didn't know what to expect because we had never seen you do stand up, but we were blown away. So.
That makes me happy to hear.
Yeah.
That's obviously what you want. You don't want the other thing. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, that's terrible.
But I was like, it's not good. It could be a shit show, and I bet you I still enjoy it. So, but no, it was fucking.
I appreciate that, and you're right. It could be a shit show. You never know.
You never know. That's one of the beautiful parts about stand-up.
Well, we have some control over the shit show part.
Yeah,
you know,
we do.
Right? You can write jokes.
But yeah, I greatly appreciate you sitting down with me today, Duncan.
What a pleasure. It's so nice meeting you, Joe.
Yeah, and thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cool, man.